What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the MMB Performance Podcast. And I'm excited today. After talking with Brant last week, I was excited to jump on a call with DJ today. DJ is a guy I've been following for a little while now, especially in the last couple of years after I got into the endurance world, especially the OCR specifically. And my friend Beth put me on to him, and I followed his kind of journey, followed World Toughest Mudder 2022 in the thought that I wanted to potentially do one in 2023. And then come to find out this dude won it. And I'm excited to talk to him a bit more about his background, his journey leading up to World Toughest Mudder 2022. And then there's a couple other crazy races he did or endurance feats, which one I believe put him in the hospital over this week-long challenge. We can dive into that more a little bit. I'm excited to talk to him. He's got obviously an incredible mindset to achieve what he has. And I'm excited to dive a bit more into that. And hopefully you guys can connect with him and more about his story. So DJ, welcome to the podcast, bro.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. So crazy, crazy stories with you. I've been following you over the last couple of years, especially World Toughest Mudder, all these different events you're doing. But I want to kind of go back to the beginning and learn a little bit more about you. I followed a few other podcasts you did. I know you bowling growing up, playing into sports and all this kind of stuff, which some people dove into, but I want to dive into the mindset side. Being an athlete growing up, been transitioning to endurance. What are you fascinated by endurance sports, and what has gotten into you to that where you started more OCRs, you've only done World's Toughest twice? Like what intrigues you about the endurance sport side of pushing that limit to the kind of the highest level and seeing what you're capable of?
Yeah, that's a great question, but I guess it's like you kind of summed it up right at the end, right? It's just like kind of pushing it to the limit and seeing what you are capable of, how far you can go. It's one of those things where it's like every time you finish something, you always go back, right? And you're looking at the playbook and you go, man, I could have been faster. I could have done something better, right? So it's like every time you always see an opportunity for improvement and for growth, right? And that's a beautiful thing just to know, like, if you look at it, you're like, I can beat myself by a second every time, right? Like that makes sense on paper. Obviously, like that's not the case every time we go out there. We have good days and we have bad days. But yeah, it's just like the opportunity to really dive deep into what you are able to do and what you're willing to do almost more than anything.
When did that start though? So was that something, obviously, like I said, bowling and things like that, but the endurance sport side from day one, was that what got you into it? Or was it kind of like, oh, I'm going to try this. And then right away it clicked that we're like, oh, I know I'm going to push to the limit here. Has that been more your personality type kind of as you grew up?
Yeah, so interesting, right? So I mean, I got sick in 2017
Okay.
and I had diverticulitis. So I was kind of in a similar world to you, where I was like bodybuilding and powerlifting. And I was just over 200 pounds, like, fairly lean, like good size, right? And I had been doing that for probably like 8 to 10 years. And I put on a lot of mass, a lot of time eating. And in 2018, I had a surgery to get my diverticulitis removed, right? So I had a surgery and I had like almost a foot of my large intestine lopped out. And at the end of that, I was like 155 pounds. And I'm like,
Wow.
man, like, I don't really, I don't want to try to put all that weight back on. That took a lot. So this is an opportunity for me to take a hard left here and try something new. So that was kind of the catalyst to that. And I was actually laying in the hospital recovering from my surgery after surgery. And my friend had sent me over Cameron Haynes's Instagram page
Dude,
and
I
was like,
love
you'll
Cameron
love this
Haynes.
dude. And I did. I immediately, I jumped on board and I just, lots of time laying there all day scrolling through. And I'm like, oh, word, like this dude running. I didn't even know a 200-mile race existed at this point. And I'm like, I want to do that, right? Like for whatever reason, I have very little running in my background at this point, and I'm like 200s. That sounds sick. Like just like go out and
I love it.
push yourself to the end, right? So yeah, like right from the beginning, I knew I wanted to get into the ultra endurance side of things. I had no idea how I was really going to get there, right? And then getting out of the hospital, just slowly working towards it, man.
Dude, that's incredible. Now, were you so with the that goal, were you following Goggins and all at that point or anything like
N-
that?
Nothing. No,
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 okay.
I
So
didn't know
because
any of these guys yet.
yeah, those guys are incredible. I picked up on those probably a decade ago when I was still in bodybuilding. It didn't relate, but I just like again, I love people that are just willing to push it to the limit. And the more people, I don't know if you're like this, I feel like the more people that question you, it just gives me the reality of like, I'm doing the right thing because most people don't want to do it. Are you
Oh,
like that at all? Like you kind of like the more I'm intrigued by doing things that a lot of people maybe don't think the average person doubts that it's possible or it's crazy. Is that, do you know, is that you at all? Or is it just like you do your own thing without really noticing?
yeah, there's little bits of that, right? Like at the end of the day, if I didn't have anybody looking at what I was doing, I'm pretty sure I would still be doing the exact same thing. I have a lot
Yeah,
of fun doing it. I like the trail running because I like to be outside, right?
sure.
I want to be outdoors. I want to test myself, and I like to be fit and feel good. So I would be doing it regardless. But yeah, you go back and you tell people that you're training for a 24-hour obstacle course race, and they look at you a little sideways and they're like, you get the same thing every time. Like, I would never even drive my car that far for that long or
Right.
whatever it is, right? So yeah, I mean, then I get a little bit of fire from that. It's I don't know, to be an outlier of sorts. And if you're an outlier because you're successful, or if you're an outlier just because you picked one of these, like fringe activities to participate in, it feels good. You're doing something that's not common, and you're putting yourself out there for something special potentially.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So when you got sick, I'm curious because I had a couple big injuries and kind of went into a not depression, but just like probably a year and a half, 2 years. I broke my femur, I had rods put in now, and that was a big setback for me, and it kind of messed me up for a while. When you got sick, it seems like you rebounded well from what you said. Like it didn't, did it like did your headspace when you get injured, when you have a setback? Are you able to compartmentalize it pretty quick and be like, okay, focus on what I can control. Let's like new goal, new thing, or is it something that was challenging to make that transition?
Yeah, so for that example in particular, I had never really gone through anything like that before. I was just weightlifting just to kind of lift weights and just like put on muscle and feel good. And I never really had any major injuries leading into that. And that was, again, like almost a decade's worth of work. The hardest part about that was just I got so small, and what I was working towards was just wiped. It was
Yeah.
totally wiped. And that's why I was like, man, maybe I don't even want to do this again. Right. So that alone, just like the opportunity to just say, hey, I'm going to pivot and pick something totally new, made that easy. I think if I would have tried to go back into just pure weightlifting just for aesthetics, that would have been challenging because it would have taken so long to get everything back. I've had injuries since, participating in these endurance sports now. I swear I've had like every running injury in the book for the most part. And at first, the first few were the hardest, where I'm like, oh my God, I took 3 days off. I'm never gonna recover. I'm never gonna get anything done in this, right? Since then, I've done a very good job of uh, just giving myself the grace to take time off when I need time off. We all need it, whether it's an overuse injury or it's like just a little bit of, quote unquote burnout, but just like getting
Sure.
really, really tired and exhausted. And you just got to put it down for a second and recover. And I've done a really, really good job of just giving myself the grace to do that when I need, right? And that doesn't also mean I don't do anything. I just find something else to do for the most part, right? Like I'll have some tendonitis in my foot and I won't run. I'll bike for the week or whatever it is, right? Or like some impact will be bothering me, so I won't run. I'll hike on the treadmill, but I'll do that all week and I'll just find something to replace it. So I'm always feel like I'm progressing and moving forward.
I think a lot of people are like that. I know it used to be really bad with that, like, especially in the bodybuilding. When I won a pro card in 2016 and I was competing and go all this stuff, and I used to be in that mindset. I'm 33 now. I was 26 when I did that, and it was one of those like, oh, it was catastrophic if you missed like a workout or something didn't go perfect in that perfection kind of mentality. When you start to realize as you get into older, and I think a lot of people, even clients that I have, they struggle with like if everything isn't perfect, they just want to quit or it's not worth it. Where like to your point, you just gotta roll with the punches, whether it's injuries or like one bad day nutrition, or like you just got to keep going, and that consistency over perfection will get you there in the end. I mean, that's, I feel like what a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, yeah. A plan can be perfect on paper, right? But if it's not actually working well for you, then it's not the right thing that you need to be doing on that day, right? Even if it's just a small diversion on a day, or you got to totally change things up because you're not getting what you thought you were going to get out of it, right? Or you're not handling it the way you thought you might have handled, right? You got to put your ego aside and listen to yourself and listen to your body and do what you have to do to stay consistent. Again, that's the most important thing I've come across in my, almost 6 years of endurance training.
Now with
Don't
World's
stop.
Toughest, yeah, absolutely. And I think now I'm curious how this went for you. So I did my first World's Toughest this past year. And I got advice that was like, plan as much as you want, but at some point everything's gonna hit the shit's gonna hit the fan and you're just gonna have to kind of roll with the punches. How did your plan go over that 24 hours? Because you did, was it 100 or 105 when you
I did
won?
105 in
Okay, so when you
2021 and 2022.
yeah, that's so yes. Okay, so I didn't realize that piece. So what you won that and you fought third or fourth the year before?
Third.
Third. Okay, so you podium both years.
Yeah.
Now, over those 2 years, did you notice a big difference in how you approached it from like nutrition to training? Like, what was the biggest difference over those 2 years for you to make that step from 3 to 1? Because you did the same mileage, or was it just more of who showed up that day, do you think? Or you handled adversity a little bit better? What was your biggest difference for you?
Yeah. So the biggest difference um, between the 2 years was the race itself, right? Like the environment we were put in. In 2021, we were in Lachlan, Nevada. We were in the desert. It was a high of like almost 90 degrees, a low of 55 or 56. So it was really comfortable. No wetsuits needed. It was a pretty runnable course. And in 2022, we had a high of maybe 55 and a low of closer to 30, right? So that alone made the environment significantly more difficult to handle. I was in a wetsuit for 14 hours in 2023. So I went into that race much, much fitter to get the same amount of miles. The race was totally different, right? It was cold, there was more water, because in the desert they didn't put tarps in some of the pits and the desert just drank it up, dude. It loved it, and like, and
Yeah.
going to Alabama, that was not the case. It was muddy. It was still like fairly runnable. The elevation wasn't too crazy, but just like dealing with the challenges that the environment had put in front of you made that race much, much harder. So the difference year over year, interestingly enough, I almost had two identical years, January to December, right? I went, okay, 2021 actually went pretty well, so what do I do with that? What do I change? I don't think a whole lot, right? I think what I do is I try to increase my volume in training more than anything. So what I did at the end of 2021 is I had actually ended up quitting my job in the gym, like doing in-person training stuff in New York, and I moved to Durango, Colorado in February of 2022, and I went 100% in. That was all I did for an entire year. I thought about nothing but winning World's Toughest Mudder during the course of that year, and that was like one of the biggest changes was the mindset. Like, there's not a person who stepped on the start line that thought about that race more than I did.
I
I
love
went
that,
there to
man.
win. Yeah.
I love that. And I wanted to bring up the mindset piece. And also I want to ask you about the adversity and mental toughness side. But with your mindset, like what for you? So I think a lot of people struggle with developing either a positive mindset or limiting negative self-talk. I don't know if you're into mantras or journaling or vision boards or just imagery work, or like for you, how did you develop that difference in that year to going all in? Like, what were you doing over that year to develop that mindset where there was just no doubt you were going to put up, if you win, you win, but like you're going to put up a serious number and you're going to put in the work. But what changed for you over that year that you did mentally?
Yeah, again, I went 100% in, and I put the hat on as endurance athlete, right? I took it professionally. Quick, just like quick story in
Yeah.
2021, getting ready to toe the line there about a week out. Josh Reed was coaching me at the time, and I look at him and I go, "Hey, man, I'm really excited to go out there and just like see what I can do, and learn a little bit, have some experience in the event, so I can come back next year and potentially be more competitive at it, right?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, man, I just want you to know that I wouldn't be surprised if I saw you on the podium this year." So then that was like an immediate mindset switch for me where I go, like, I look up to this guy. He's got faith in me. Maybe I can go out and do this. So the new goal became, all right, let's go and try to run 100 miles and see what happens, right? And just let the cards fall where they may. Went out there, ran 105, and then I get out of that race and I go, holy shit, okay, maybe I can do this. Like, I'm good at this. the farthest I had ever run before that was 50 miles, and that was October of that same year. And I just went and more than doubled that, right? So I'm like, if I put my nose to the grindstone and I do nothing but think about this event and go there and win, I'm going to be really, really hard to beat if I go all in on this thing. So that's exactly what I tried to do. So in 2022, moved to Colorado, all in on the thing. And, you know, I would be, every time I went out for a run, I thought about World's Toughest Mudder, you know, and my goal wasn't really necessarily to win. I wanted to go and run 125 miles at that race.
Badass,
I'm going to
dude.
go there and I'm going to do something that nobody's ever done. And that's exactly what I want to do. And if I do that, if you beat me, congratulations, you know,
Right.
like that's amazing. I will shake your hand at the end of this day for
You
sure if
earned
we
it
go
at
out
that
there.
point, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought about more than anything. And I would visualize that all the time. I'd be laying down at night and I would start to like just dream about the race, you know, before I would be daydreaming before I actually fell asleep. And far out from the race. And at points I'm like, man, maybe it's a little too far out to be this excited about the thing, but I guess not, right? Like I was obsessed, you
I
know.
feel like
I
that
put I
gets
put
you.
everything into it.
Yeah, and I feel like to your point, I think I love that you're that obsessed with it because I think when you have a goal that big, I mean, I think the majority of athletes at your level or to win these races or do this, you have to be obsessed. You can't do that kind of work day in and day out unless there is that type of obsession. I feel like in that in general. The day of the race, when you go up, I'm very curious here because I only know about my first experience and a few people I've talked to. You're in the box, you're at the beginning. Now, were you elite when you ran that? Because you came in 3, right? So you were elite.
Yeah.
Now, going into it, like, was there that anxious excitement? Do you feel like you were dialed in? You were focused? The like gratitude kicked in when you're at the line that day. Do you remember how you felt?
Very calm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very calm. I didn't need to be excited. I was excited all year, you know, like I knew
Yeah.
what was coming. The work was done and I just had to go out and perform that day, right? Another funny story, and it brings us back to Josh, but we were both in the start corral. Um, and he looks at me and it's 10-second countdown's going off. And he goes, you know what, man? He's like, I've always been scared to win this race. And I just look back at him and I'm like, but not today. And he goes, not
Yeah.
today, right? And we just dap
I
up and
love
boom, and we
it.
take off. Yeah. And there's a
That
picture
gives
of
me
me
like
through
chills,
like
dude. I love it.
oh, it was so good. It was so good. Moments I'll never forget. Like those are worth everything, you know, just like that's somebody as soon as I started doing my endurance training, you know, I was a few months in, I'm like, man, I need a coach, you know, and I went to him and he definitely streamlined it for me. So I got a lot of gratitude for Josh. He's an awesome dude and very knowledgeable man who
Or
helped me get to where I am today.
yeah, he was a big piece of the
Um,
puzzle, it seemed like.
for sure. Yeah. And then yeah, there's a picture through the OCR report of me on the start line and they're like doing the big speech and I'm just kind of chilling, like got my eyes closed and I'm just breathing. Yeah, just staying relaxed. And I'm like, I don't need any energy right now. This is not where I need to put out. I'll need to put out soon. So just right now, just chill and know that I did the work to get here and do what I'm supposed to do today. So
I got some advice, before I did mine, and it was, a lot of people you see on the world's toughest, Facebook page or just people you talk to in general. There are a lot of like, how do you handle how do you avoid being so cold? How do you avoid the fatigue? How do you avoid this? And I got some advice from people. It's like you're not going to avoid that. It's when it happens. How do you react to the situation and have a plan in place to kind of handle that? Is that kind of how it was for you? You're like, it's not a matter of if and when things are going to happen. It's just like, all right, when this happens, we're going to handle it and just kind of roll with the punches. Part one. And then two, like what challenges did you have during that race that stick to your mind the most?
yeah, I mean, you know that something is going to be difficult in that race. So hopefully you're prepared the best you can to handle those things when they get there. Like the cold, I did cold exposure every single day throughout the year, right? We had a creek out behind the house and I'd go and I'd plunge for 3 to 5 minutes, you know, in snow runoff, like up to my neck, right? And
I
just like,
remember seeing that you're like in random like
yeah,
lake and there's like a mountain of snow around you just in shorts.
yeah, exactly, right? So like do those bits as well. And then you know they're coming, so just deal with it, right? Like it's one day, it's 24 hours, you wanted to do the thing, so go out there and do it, you know? It's like, is that going to stop you? Like they can, like if you let it get bad. So now put the the pieces into place ahead of time to say, okay, I'm going to have the right gear to put on at the right moments. I'm going to make these decisions at the right time, right? And I'm just going to try to put this puzzle piece together the way it's supposed to be put together and make sense, right? Because if you do miss a piece and you put your wetsuit on a lap too late and you're jackhammering out there, right? Like you're going to lose a lot of body heat. It's going to start to cost more calories. You're going to need time to recover from that if you can recover from that, right? So it's like being out there and just being a professional the whole day, right? And executing and executing and executing.
What was the nutrition like for you? I had I've had a couple of people I talked to with different approaches, but I was very curious how you handled your nutrition over that 24 hours.
Yeah, my plan was to go and do liquid calories as long as I could. So, man, and I have to remember now, but I did that for like 10 to 12 hours. Nothing
Okay.
but a product from Endurelite called Fuel Elite, right? So it's like their carbohydrate and electrolyte mix that they use. It's kind of similar to a Tailwind. So I did
Yep.
nothing but that and a Morton gel for
Okay.
like the first like 10 to 12 hours, and so I'd be on course and I would have two servings in a 500 milliliter flask. And I think that I'm trying to remember numbers now because I haven't looked at the label, but that I believe is 240 calories plus 400 milligrams of sodium, and just make sure I get that down before I get to the start of the next lap. And I would just pick one spot on course where I go, every time I pass this, I'm going to eat this gel, no matter what, whether I want it or not. I need the calories, just eat the gel, right? So I did that for at least like 10 hours, and then I actually started to get a little too salty, so I needed to transition away from that high sodium drink. So what I started to do is I started to just mix maple syrup and water.
Interesting.
And I did that for a while. But now every time I'm coming into transition, now I'm eating a whole slice of pizza. I'm taking candy bars with me, and I did that. So my primary source of calories was the Fuel Elite from Endurelite, Morton gels, Snickers, and pizza, right? And as I'm getting farther in the race, I'm just eating anything people hand to me. I trust my pit crew at that point. They're like, "Hey, you need some of this?" Oh, and like I would had like some quarter peanut butter sandwiches cut up, and if I was eating something solid, I would just take it with me. And I'm going to eat this before the first obstacle, right? So I'm always moving as well, right? I'm never wanting to stand still. You're standing still, you're getting cold. Being cold costs more calories and you're not making forward progress, right? The name of the game in 24 hours is to just never stop moving. If you stay out on course, even if you walked the whole race, right? Let's say you walk 3 miles an hour, you should hit 75 miles. So it's like if you just never ever stop moving during
Yeah.
that race, you're going to go out there and you're going to put up some pretty solid numbers. But yeah, so it's just like towards the end, eat anything and everything possible. Like there's pictures of Javier like putting pizza in my mouth. I got two Snickers bars in my hands, and never did I go on course without that bottle and that gel.
One of my favorite videos, my friend Kat, she pitted me with my wife and my uncle this past year. And I was showing her your video. I'm like, hey, I got DJ coming on. I'm like, she's like, wait, who's DJ? And I was explaining. And then I was showing him, I'm like, oh, you got to watch this like 20-second clip. So one of my favorite clips that you've posted for sure. And it's you about, getting videoed in the last push to you cross the finish line. And that little your buddy's video. Who was videoing you? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's Javier.
Javier was videoing you.
Javier Escobar.
Perfect. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Now, how did like I get chills watching it? I'm like, dude, I just wish it was 2024 already because I want to go do this. You talked about how you felt at the beginning and calm. How did you feel in that moment when you're like, I'm gonna be the fucking champ, man?
Oh, it's just relentless, dude. You'd have had to fucking kill me to take the thing away from me.
That's
Yeah.
that was right at the end too. So it's got to be such a gratitude, excitement, like emotional moment.
Oh, very, very much so. Very emotional. Again, something I was like just putting in the front of my mind for over a year at that point, or like a year exactly, where I'm like, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna run my 125 miles, and that came off of the table really quick. By the way, I realized that wasn't happening just like due to the course itself. But then the next goal was just like, okay, just like don't stop moving. You came here to put everything you possibly could into this race, so like that is now the next thing that's gonna happen. So no matter what, you run to the end, right?
Yeah.
And then getting to that last lap, I think at that point I had just taken over first. I didn't even, another thing is I didn't look at the leaderboard for the first like 20 hours. So I didn't even know where I was. I was just doing my thing, had my head down and just running, right? And just knowing that if I don't stop, I'll be fine, right? Um, yeah, and at that point, I think it was going into lap 18 or 19. I finally glanced at the leaderboard. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in third place. Like, man, okay, we're racing now, right? So now I'm running like a little bit scared. Now I'm pretty. I'm feeling
Sure.
the emotions, right? And then it's just kind of like, okay, just bear down and do everything you possibly can, right? So you turn on the jets and you go, right? And it was that last lap with that clip that you're talking about where I crossed the finish line, I grabbed my band, and Javier kind of looks at me and goes, "So all you got to do is keep this up, right?" And I'm like, "Yep," and you can hear it in my voice. I'm like, I'm absolutely shot. He's like, "And then you're gonna be what?" And I'm world champ, baby, world
Yeah.
champ. So, and
Yeah.
I knew it was coming if I just go, right? I had Mark Gaudet chasing me. The dude is a monster in his own right. He's done some pretty incredible things. He's won the Spartan Ultra World Champs. He's won the best Ranger competition. That dude was on my heels. And I'm like, man, he could throw down, right? So who knows if, I don't know. Like, I feel not great, but not terrible. So I'm just gonna push, and this dude could all of a sudden start dropping some faster miles behind me. So I just got to put the burners on and go. Never look back, just go, right? And that was it. Just maintain to the end.
Yeah, and dude, I love that. It excites me, and I think it's just like inspirational because, like I don't, didn't mention completely, but I know, I think the whole thing that I hear is that the race doesn't start till midnight. The race doesn't start till midnight. Like that's the big thing people talk about. And for you, it was even longer, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
You were climbing that leaderboard slowly but surely. And no one, it doesn't even, I don't even know if you were in the top 10 for a while. I don't remember, but you probably still do, but it took a while for you to get to that point. And it's like, oh shit, here he comes. Like DJ's moving up the list.
Yeah, I think I made it in the top 10 close to like 10 hours in, you
Yeah.
know? Um, yeah, and in my opinion, that race doesn't start until like 16 to 18 hours into the thing. And you have to
Yeah.
be like racing ahead of time, right? And that just means like just go out there and run your maximum sustainable effort, which is hard to gauge over 24 hours, uh, just to the end, man, right? And it's that race is not about who's the fastest and who goes out the quickest. It's mostly about who slows down the least.
Yeah.
So it's like just go out and be consistent and just work, man. So
I
yeah.
learned that the hard way where I remember my wife coming to the pit, um, I think 11 hours in, and my wife's like, "You're on pace for 90. Like you're crushing it." Like she was like all excited. And she's like, just keep it up, keep your pace. And then I had like a wall hit at like 2 in the morning. And to your point, that was the first time I stopped more than like 5 minutes. And then it was just like, and I got in my head a bit, and it was interesting. And I don't know, you're moving so quick, but I don't know if you've ever experienced this, maybe even a different race. The environment at Worlds is incredible. Like volunteers, the people, the environment is insane. Like people that are in pits, my pit, were like, I want to do this, I want to do this. But it's interesting. So when it got into the night, there's very little people. It seemed like as compared to when it started. But there's some people that I was talking to that, everyone's fighting that mental battle at that point, like negativity, positive, want to quit, don't want to quit. I found myself a few times get caught up talking to people that were walking slower than I should have been and also in a bad headspace, and it felt it rub off on me. Is just as like having the right person next to you. It's like, come on, dude, let's go. Like, did you ever find that at all, or you were so zoned in because you were so competitive? Because that was one thing that hurt me. I was like, you got to get away from this person. They're a really nice guy, but like they're slower than you. They're being a little more negative. You got to find the right person to pace with or run with, or you just got to do your thing.
Hmm. Yeah, you definitely just have to do your thing. You
Yeah.
can't, you don't want to latch on to anybody in that race, right? It's unlikely the correct thing for you to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get two people to go out there and run the exact same race over 24 hours is going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
Both years I did it, I probably had, at least like a 12-hour stint where I didn't say a word to anybody except my pit crew, right? It's just like head down, and every exhale was like this guttural, just like, just go, just go, just go, and do everything you possibly can to move forward. And anything that happens around you is irrelevant, right? Like you could see people, and even the people that are moving slower, just run past them, pat them on the back, and just keep going, man. And
Yeah.
they'll likely just give you a little bit more motivation that you can use, man. Oh, hey, it's you again. Awesome. Yo, keep it up, right? And you just do that and just don't stop, man. Yeah, you just have to do your own thing. You have to do your own thing that entire race.
Yeah.
To
I
run
think,
as a group is difficult.
yeah. And I think that was, there's people I met, before the race, I happened to see them and, everyone was so supportive. That was the thing, like I said,
Yeah.
but I found myself getting into a headspace I didn't think I would get into because I kind of prided myself on that. And that's where my mileage really dipped is throughout the night, which I think everyone slows down to an extent a little bit.
Yep.
So I saw you post this the other day. It transitions out of World's Toughest, and I just saw that you posted the Tough Mudder Infinity in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
When is that? Is that
That,
one?
that's February 24th.
Okay, so you're definitely going out for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, how do you feel going out to that? Because I know we talked briefly before we got on. Getting off the treadmill, starting to get back on your feet. How do you feel prepared in regard to that race coming up in a few months?
Yeah, that's a great question also, right? That is one that I'm coming off of my first. Hold on, I got this dog. 1 second.
Oh, you're good, dude. Do your thing.
Good. All right, cool. Cool. Somebody walked in and got him. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Yeah,
You're fine.
that's another one I'm coming off of, like my first real major injury
Oh,
from
I have a question. Yeah,
because
just
of the
reminded me too.
Colorado Trail. Yeah. So
We can dive into that first if you want. That was something I wanted to ask because
okay.
that was the week long, hundreds of miles. You got like pneumonia, hospitalized, fluid in the lungs, coughing up. I mean, it was crazy. I heard the sound. I mean, that was nasty. So you want to tell me a little about that, and then we can dive back into Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, for sure. So that was my replacement race for 2023. I had finished the 2022 WTM, won that event, and went, "Oh, I'm going to go back and I'm going to win this race more than anybody's ever won this race." That was kind of the goal and the mindset coming out of that. And then a few months in, I had just was thinking about exactly what I wanted to do. Right, I'm like, I won World's Toughest. What else is there, right? Like, do I just want to keep going back and just winning that event if I can, right? I think I can. And that sounds pretty cool. But at the same time, there's a lot of other cool stuff out there. And I've always gravitated towards these really long events. So I was talking to my buddy and he goes, do the Colorado Trail. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's do the Colorado Trail. So that is a 485-mile point to point from Durango, Colorado to Denver, Colorado, through the Rocky Mountains with 90,000 feet of elevation gain.
Damn, bro.
So Mike McKnight has the current record at 7 days, 13 hours, 15 minutes, and 16 seconds. So that was the goal, to go out and beat the record on that. I ended up making it 425 miles with 80,000 feet of climbing before I got packed in the back of an ambulance and went and spent a couple days at the hospital. But yeah, that was pretty tough. Like the first day went perfect, and also did an article with WeViews. If anybody's interested, y'all can go to weviews.com and check that out. There's like a full-length article in there with my full story in there, pretty detailed. But yeah, I had the first day was almost perfect, right? And for better or worse, I went out there and I did 75 miles with 16,000 feet of climbing in like 21 hours. And I woke up the next morning and one of my pacers had bailed. They left. They were just they had a breakdown of sorts, right? So they took off, and that was one person who was supposed to be doing the entire length of the trail with me. So that was like the first.
That's some adversity right to start off right there, man.
Yeah, the first big hiccup. So not a big deal. My other two pacers who were coming the whole way with me stepped up and did some massive sections. Like my buddy Sam did the next 45 miles with me, and he's muling most of my stuff, right? Like I got my snacks and my water, but like extra gear, he's carrying in the big pack. So dude crushed it. But yeah, at the end of the second day, my foot started to bug me towards the end, and I started to move really slow where I wasn't able to dorsiflex my left foot anymore. So every time I picked it up, all of those extensor muscles on the top of my leg just screamed, and it came on pretty suddenly. So I wasn't sure what happened. Like I didn't have any like traumatic, I didn't roll an ankle or like kick anything. So
was it like shin splints vibes?
Very much so, but all from the top of my foot, like up the front of my leg,
Gotcha.
So very severe shin splints if they're going to be shin splints. finished off that day, hobbled it in, and my leg was just throbbing, right? I put ice on it and I passed out. And also, I laid down that first day, and the plan was to sleep for like 4 or 5 hours, and I didn't sleep at all. Like I lay there for like 2.5 hours with my eyes shut, and I'm all right, well, this isn't working, so let's just get back to our feet. So I ended up not sleeping for like the first 48 hours of that event. But that second night, I lay down, my foot's bugging me. I'm like, man, this is like really painful. This is not good. We'll see how it feels in the morning, and we'll evaluate and carry on, right? I wake up that next morning and I cannot move my ankle. My foot is just like, it's starting to balloon up, and it's in a lot of pain, even without trying to mobilize it. It just hurts and aches. So I'm like, at that point, that's my first thought. I'm like, man, maybe I wasn't ready for this thing and I'm done, like this is
Yeah.
not going well. So, I mean, the crew comes in, they kind of start like picking my brain a little bit, see where I'm at. And they're like, well, start massaging it, poking it, prodding it, doing everything they possibly can. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll quit at the next aid station, right? Like I'll just hobble there, like big deal, right? I got to go another 25 miles or whatever to see it out. And if it starts to work again, it starts to work again. So what we did is we taped my ankle into dorsiflexion, so I didn't have to use those extensors on the top of my foot.
That's some
And
Goggins and like the Iron Cowboy shit. Do you know the Iron Cowboy?
yeah,
Yeah, that same thing when he did his big race. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it makes
no,
me
you're
think
good.
of him
You're
during
good.
that whole thing.
Yeah, man, it was something like I wanted to finish. I wanted to finish this more than anything. This is another thing that I had spent a long time focusing on, and it meant a lot to me in the moment, right? And I had myself that I wanted to do it for, and I had everybody who came to crew me that I wanted to do it for, right? Like these people took all this time off work, and they're spending gas money and doing a bunch of stuff for me to chase one of my goals, right? And like that's powerful, right? So I'm like, well, I can't quit now, right? Like, like we'll keep trying. So again, taped my foot up, slapped some compression on it, and then I actually ended up going another 300 miles like that with basically a foot that doesn't work, and that is still giving me the most issues as of right now. It's come back and I'm able to run, but I think through all of the swelling and the compression and the lack of the need to use those muscles, I actually gave myself a little bit of neuropathy and pinched
Wow.
off some blood vessels. Yeah, like there's some tendons on the top of my foot coming from my extensor digitorum longus. Like there are four very obvious tendons on the top of your foot that go to your four lesser toes. We're just totally slacked. There was no tension on them at the end of this thing. So like I shut the muscle off, I told my
Wow.
brain,
From all that swelling.
yeah, from all the swelling, and then having it compressed to kind of keep the swelling down a little bit and reduce
Right.
the pain. Yeah, I think I actually like pinched nerves there and like shut blood flow off to the thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and that took, but I couldn't even I couldn't get those tendons to fire for about like 6 weeks after. And then would take like all my brain power, and I would just see like small twinge come up, and I'd be like, "Oh my god, it's still there! Thank God!"
Oh,
Oh
man,
geez,
dude.
I'm like, "All right,
Oh,
it's not totally ruptured, so this is
oh
great
God.
news." But can I get this thing to come back to life?
Oh.
Yeah, so that was like I dealt with that for 5 days.
When did this end again? I'm blanking out. When?
So I finished it on October 1st. I
Okay,
got
so
off the
you got
channel.
October, November, finishing December. So you're talking 3 months since this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Now it's
Now,
3 months.
there's
Yes.
obviously, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, like so the foot issue came about at the end of day 2, and it was almost 2 days later I started to get some respiratory issues where I developed a small cough, which just got a little bit worse every day. Like the first day it happened, just coughing while I'm moving. I slept that night. I woke up the next morning, and now I'm starting to fill with fluid, and I'm like, and I spent like the first like half an hour of the morning just like doing everything I could to cough out all this phlegm and mucus, and I would spit up as much as I can. I'd get back on my feet, and I did that 3 or 4 days in a row, and every day I would wake up, it would be worse and worse, and there would just be like these terrible gurgling noises coming from my respiratory system every morning that I woke up. But I'm just like, man, if we can clear it out, I can keep running, like, so let's just try to cough it up and finish this thing.
If I don't die, we're good, man.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We're fine. Whatever. Like I seem to be okay during the day. The mornings suck, but the days are challenging because,
Oh, I love it.
there's obviously some obstruction there, but if I can clear most of it out and have
Yeah.
a semblance of a good breath, like I'm willing to go. So I did that for quite a few days, and on the last day, there actually started like some blood was coming up with it. I'm like,
Okay.
man, like, all right, now this isn't good. Now I'm like a little bit nervous, but we just like had steam in my face, doing everything we could to cough up and cough up. And I did that for like, again, probably like an hour on the very last day, coughed up a bunch of blood and phlegm and mucus. And I'm like, well, maybe the blood isn't actually coming from my lungs. Maybe it's from like, cause it's just dry out here. Like my nose is
Right.
bleeding,
Maybe
right?
it's
Like
fine. Yeah.
maybe it's fine, you know? I am kind of drowning, but outside of that, maybe it's okay. We just have one more day to get through. I just got to do 110 miles over
Oh,
like the
it's, I
next like
love it.
30 hours, and we'll be fine. 36 hours, whatever it was. And then on that day, I think I ended up going like another, I don't know, maybe maybe I did like another 60 miles or so. I'd have to look at the actual numbers, but yeah, I ended up at like 5 o'clock that next morning. You know, I'm like, I'm suffering. I'm doing everything. I'm like playing every mind game I possibly can to continue to move forward. And I get to one point and I just like look at my pacer and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Like I realized in that moment I don't know how to quit. I don't know how to say I'm done.
Right. You
And
needed
that
someone at some point to shut you down.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like it was my decision, and I did say, hey man, like I can't do this and I need help. Like I think I had 17 hours to cover the last 60 miles. So I'm still on record pace, like trying to run through this thing with pneumonia. So it's still like there and I could still see it and taste it. And it's like within reach, but I'm just like, I can no longer move forward quickly enough. I can't breathe, you know, I just can't, you know, I could still run, which was interesting. Like I still had like spring in my step and I was
Yeah.
moving really well. Like my body felt good. I was like, eventually like the pain in my foot just like was gone. Um, for whatever reason. And again,
Your
I
body
think
was
that's
so
like a
focused on
nerve
so
thing.
many other things going on.
Yeah. So yeah, eventually I'm like, hey man, I can't. And I was like, I have to stop. And he goes, okay, cool. He goes, what do you want to do? And I was like, I need help now. Like, I feel like I'm literally feel like I'm drowning. He's like, okay, like, we tried to call crew. They didn't have service. We luckily had service. So we called an ambulance. And again, luckily they got there within like 20 minutes and put me in the back of the ambulance and brought me to the hospital. And it's interesting, right? Like as soon as I said I'm done, everything got so bad so quickly where like I started to get cold and my breathing just like worsened exponentially where all of a sudden it was just like again like just these gurgling noises as I was trying to inhale and it's just like these little short breaths like sitting on the ground waiting for the ambulance to come get me. Yeah, threw me in the back, put me on an IV, gave me some breathing treatments, and I hung out in the hospital for like 48 hours. And over the course of those 2 days, I they gave me like a bag to spit everything I coughed up in. I ended up spitting up like 20 ounces of phlegm and mucus,
Oh my God, dude.
like just an incredible amount of like solid
Yeah.
gunk. Yeah.
Damn,
Um,
bro.
yeah. And then that was the end of that adventure. So
What did the medics say when they get there? Like, at that point, like how if you don't call them in that moment where they're like, dude, you were getting close to things going really bad.
they said you probably should have called us a long time ago. that
That's
was
probably
basically
good
what they
advice.
boiled it down to. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I think I went a little too far, don't you?
Can you look at my foot too? I can't feel it.
Yeah, they're like, well, the hospital will check your foot out. And
Yeah.
I got it x-rayed in the hospital because eventually like it just turned to like this big gross piece of Play-Doh, like foot up to like my knee was just like all
Oh,
edema, you know, like gross and pitting. And got it x-rayed, no fractures in it. It was just like way overworked, just like tendonitis everywhere. And that's what I'm imagining, right? Like we didn't actually
yeah.
get an MRI or anything, but couldn't use it. It wasn't weight bearing. So
Are you married
yeah,
or
that one.
anything?
No, no, I've got
Okay.
a girlfriend. No, not
Okay.
married though. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious of their side. So knowing my wife, who is a little bit, type A about some things, and even for world, she's like, you need to look at this, she need to do that. And I'm like, can only imagine what she's thinking when she sees you for the first time or hears what's going on.
She crewed for me the whole way.
Did she? That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Um, So you'd have to ask her what she thought along the way.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure
yeah,
she's like, "What is this guy doing?" But supportive at the same time.
100%, dude. Yeah, she will. If at the end of the day, it's my decision during in those moments if I want to keep working, right? And she
Sure.
respects that. Yeah, she's there to
That's
support
awesome,
me.
man.
Always does. Yeah.
So now you're 3 months out of this wild ass adventure. Body slowly coming back to life. Transitioning into the race in Saudi Arabia, the toughest. I kind of know what it is, but just a super brief what that race involves. And then just what's your expectation going into this race?
Yeah, so it is an 8 hour tough mudder, right? So it's 10K loops. Whoever does the most laps at the end of the 8 hours wins.
These are the
Um,
best in the world. Top, like you gotta get invited, right? Or can you anyone sign up?
you don't have to get invited to this one.
Okay.
They invited a few people, but the competitive field is going to be very deep because they put out a bunch of prize money, right?
Yeah, this is the biggest one ever, right?
Yeah, there's $480,000 total that they're giving
Ooh,
away,
it's like
right?
80 to win it, right?
80 grand for first place.
Damn.
Second place is like 32 grand.
So
Third place is
crazy, dude.
still like 10 plus, right? So there's a lot of money. It's attracting a lot of high end athletes, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Eight 8 hours is potentially a sweet spot for me, right? Like,
Because
there's a
you're
lot of
better as it
really
gets slower. I mean, you're
oh
better.
yeah,
I'm sorry, you're better as it gets longer normally, right?
100%, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, make it long and make it ugly, and you're gonna have a hard time getting me out of there.
Thus your foot falling off and mucus coming everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I even learned a little bit more during that adventure, but yeah, like um, I can run kind of hard for a very long time, right?
Okay.
And that's like that 8 hour is kind of it's like right at the edge of that, right? Like you're gonna see a lot of really fast runners. There's a couple of like high end marathoners that are coming in, some like 220, sub 220 marathoners that are towing the line there. Um, I mean, so that's fast moving, right? Like that's 5:20
It's no
pace or
joke.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? That's legitimate running talent. Can they do what percentage of that can they hold over the course of 8 hours? And now you're starting to throw obstacles in. And if you're failing stuff, what do the penalties look like? But to answer your question, right, like what are my expectations going into that race? I am willing to go out there and run towards the front until I possibly until I cannot, right? Like again, I can run kind of hard for a long time. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to stay at the front of that pack. Um, I'm gonna run to win at
I
the end of
love
the
it,
day,
dude.
why not? Um, I'm obviously, I obviously gravitate towards these really long events and I'm exponentially better at them the longer they get, but 8 hours is still in that range. So I'm going out there to shake things up 100%.
I think you're going to do great, man. I think obviously you have the mindset going in. How does the body feel I mean, we talked about that, like what just happened, but do you feel like you'll be in a good enough shape, like, or one of the best shape you've still been in, even after recovering from everything?
Yeah, I do. As far as it's been going now, right? Like I took 3 weeks entirely off and did nothing but lay on the couch after the Colorado Trail. Basically, what I did is it took 2 weeks to like clear the pneumonia up. And then for another week after that, I was just like so incredibly tired that I couldn't do anything. Where I would sleep for 12 hours a night. I'd wake up, I'd eat a massive meal, and I would immediately fall back asleep again and take like an hour to 2 hour nap. And I'd wake up and I'd eat this massive meal again, and I'd fall asleep and I'd take another nap, and then I'd wake up and I'd have like a big dinner and I'd fall asleep for 12 hours. Right. So I was sleeping like 16 to 18 hours a day for 3 weeks, just nothing but rest and recovery. At the start of that fourth week, I started to do some like just got under a barbell again and doing some weight training, right? And it was light weights, but it still felt heavy. Like I was just like dragging, just like beat up. And then I started to get back into like grappling a little bit after that for a couple weeks. So I started training again now almost 8-9 weeks ago, right?
Okay.
So I haven't done nothing, and I've been doing some work on the bike over like the past 6 weeks now too, right? And I just took the opportunity, right? Well, my running volume wasn't real high. I'm not the fastest, so I did like a bunch of VO2 work on the bike and started to just like really develop my engine until I had the opportunity to get back on my feet. But yeah, over the past like month now, I've started running. I took my first week and I just did like the stair climber just to like get back on my feet again and have no impact. Keep my cadence really low, but like just work on being on my feet, right? And then the next week, I just all on the treadmill. I ran about 10 miles. And the week after that, back on the treadmill, 25 miles. Last week, I ended up doing about 40 miles, most of it being back outside. And this week, I'm on track for like a good, I don't know, 50 to 60 mile a week. So, and everything's going well. It feels
Awesome.
good. I'm able to train again. So I've got and nothing's getting worse. Things are still getting better. Like my foot feels good, but those tendons, you can still see that they don't quite have the tension that the opposite foot does, right? So there's still
Interesting.
some healing that is happening there. But again, it does get better daily. So I'm like, cool, that's the green light to move on, right? Like if I were to have jumped into it and I wouldn't have seen the progress in my healing, I would probably back down. And do something else again, right? Like just live on the bike or something. But yeah, and then outside of that running, I've been in the pool a couple days a week, still on the bike. So like the aerobic base is there, right? Like my cardio, my easy aerobic work is probably in the range of like 12 to 15 hours a week as of right now. So it's definitely not zero, right? It's not all running, but the running's starting to come. So I still have 8 weeks to really finish up, maybe 9 weeks to finish up prep for it. So I think with that, I can jump back into some really good fitness and yeah, just like target the 8 hours, right? As opposed to targeting the 24 to 1 week
Yeah.
adventures that I had been on.
You're going to know what happens in 30% less of the time, or 60% less of the time. I'm excited for you, dude. I'm obsessed now and fascinated by like the OCR and the endurance athlete stuff. I have like always respected it. In the last 3 years, it's been a whole nother level. And just I think the interesting part for me is I used to compete at a decent level in a bodybuilding. Did you ever compete in bodybuilding, powerlifting, or
No,
anything like?
no, I never
Okay.
stepped on a stage. No.
Okay. I like, I love, it was funny the difference, like you just said, 12 to 15 hours of aerobic work, like in like a bodybuilding world, it's like, even when you're competing at a high level, it's like you only need, like, if you're training well, you only need an hour in the weight room, maybe an hour and a half. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
5 days a week or whatever you want to do. Where this is like such a different ball game. To be elite, you gotta either love it or be willing to put, just like have the discipline to do it even when you don't want to do it. And I think that's what I think I have such a respect for, is like, I know a lot of people love running, but like it's hard to love it all the time. Like when you just got to put in the work. Do you find yourself like in that balance a lot, or is that big picture goal drive you even on those days that you're not motivated, even?
Yeah. I very, very rarely have an issue getting into a workout. I just like to do it no matter what. If there wasn't races on the calendar, I'd still be training. Um, yeah, there's like some days where I'm like, man, I'm tired today, and it's just like, well, put your shoes on anyways, buddy. It's like you got a workout to do. So, and it's like I call it a workout, right? But it could be like an easy run. But yeah, I enjoy the work, so it's never a real issue. I don't ever fight that. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I told myself I was gonna do it, so I'm not gonna
You
lie to
got to
me.
do it.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you said you quit? Like you actually quit like a race or something
Oh
that
my
big?
God, yeah.
Because that's got to be a weird feeling too. Because I was thinking about that. It's like, man, like that's like, 'cause it was almost impossible. Like you were willing to die basically almost before you were willing to quit. So it's, is there you knew you were in rough shape. There's got to be a little thought, any regret, anything like in the back of your head. You're like, damn, could I done, or do you feel like you literally just did everything physically possible to survive as long as you did?
Yeah, so I mean, for a long time after that, it was nothing but regrets. That was that was one of the biggest mental challenges I've had to overcome in a long time, right? Was actually having to stop. But I had to stop,
Yeah.
and through reflection, I was able to see that, up until that point, um, just felt like I quit at something, and technically I did, right? Like I pulled the plug before I got to the finish line, but I absolutely had to. Like I was in very, very rough shape, and I did everything I possibly could to move forward and uh, risk a little bit of my potential longevity in it, right? And at the end of the day, I want to do this again. So I can always go back. The trail's never going anywhere, and that is a plan. I'm going back, and I'm definitely
I
getting
knew
that
you were gonna,
that
I was gonna
record.
ask.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. there's no chance in the world. And if I go there and I actually do it and I don't get pneumonia and I don't have this foot issue, even outside of the foot issue, like I still ran through that. Like that actually didn't slow me down a whole lot. The pneumonia is like slowed me down and pulled me off, right? So if I can go there and not get sick, I will smash that record, dude. I will smash that
Oh
record.
yeah. I mean, the
That's the
fact that you
plan.
were pacing it with, like you said, a duct taped foot basically, and, not being able to breathe, probably getting 10-20% of the air you need to be getting. I mean, it's insane. It's insane how far you got with it at the pace you were doing it. It's insane. So I have no doubt. There is no doubt as long as nothing like that happens, you're going to smash it.
Yeah, every time you do something like that, like a new challenge will be presented, right? And like I said, like you committed to the event. If you truly want to do it, you'll find a way around it in that moment. So
Yeah. Now with
yeah, that
after,
was my first time having to stop something, and it hurt. It was very difficult.
oh, yeah, dude, I can imagine because and it's not like you're probably at this spot where it's like, you're not only you feel like you're letting yourself down, you're letting all these people invested, like you said, time and money and effort. And it's like, I'm sure they're like, dude, like, you probably should stop. Maybe not saying it, but they're thinking it. But there's got to be that feeling like you feel like you let this whole project down. Even though at the end of the day, like you did everything physically possible to get through that point.
Yeah, agreed.
What about now? I know are you technically sponsored by Endurelite?
Yeah,
Okay. A big piece of this, which I've learned over the last few years, is like just for Worlds to get my wife, me, down there, rent a car, hotels. I think I spent like $3,000 on this whole trip. Do you feel like that for you, a lot of this is just like because it's such a passionate thing for you? Is it, I don't know if you have any help with anything, or it's just a matter of throughout this year, these are your big goals and you're just putting money aside? Because I don't really, a lot of people realize there's so much money that goes into even these smaller races. I can't imagine the money that went into that Colorado race.
yeah. I had a little bit of help there.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, 95, 98% of it came out of our pocket, and it was
Yeah.
not cheap at all. We had uh, three cars that never stopped moving the whole way, right? And each car did somewhere around 1,600 miles, getting from Durango, and then you get up to the next station, right? And I'm going 20 miles over the mountain pass, right? But this car's got to drive 60 miles around the mountain to get to the next thing, right? So that doing that over and over and over again and then getting all the way back, right? I mean, you could just do the calculations there and say, okay, what's that cost in gas, right? And now we're feeding every person that's out there. And I had to buy all sorts of different gear that I didn't have. I had to buy just like fresh wool clothes to like stay warm, right? Like we were in some single digit temperatures with like these crazy winds blowing. Yeah, like propane to keep the heaters running for the crew, right? Like I'm not the only one eating, they're also eating, like trying to find places for these guys to sleep, and just like the little everything added up, man. Everything added up, and it was costly. So it came out of pocket. I supplement my income. I coach, which I love to do. I have a pretty small roster, and I like to keep it that way so I can keep all of my interactions with the athletes that I work with very personal, very personalized. Like I'm not going to coach this massive roster of athletes and not be able to give 100% of my heart and soul to anybody. So I do just enough there to make sure that I can get by basically year to year for the most part.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that. I'm totally happy with that. That's exactly what I chose to do. I just live my life very frugally. I buy what I need. I just need to eat, and I need to pay my rent, and I need to train, and I will do that as long as I can ride this out.
I have so much respect for that. So I'm in a interesting situation similar to you where I just quit I've been a coach trainer for the last 10 years, 11 years now. Been online coaching for the last 3.5 or so. And I just left my full-time gym job about a month ago to go all in on my online coaching business. And then I do a little in-person still independently out of location, but I'm fully, my own thing now. And it's interesting because I took a pay cut to do it. And how do you deal with, I think this is interesting because this is what I think I respect a huge amount about you based off what you just said is I feel like you don't get caught up in valuing other people's opinions on success in regard to a lot of people get caught up on the financial side, or like you gotta, holding a certain status. And you seem so content. And how old are you? 31?
31.
Yeah, so we're close in age, and I think I do okay with it. But after you said that, it's just like it clicked with me, and it's just like, man, I want to get to that point sooner than later. I'm in a good spot, but to that point where, you're feeling like you can balance that all and be happy with all these things that you get to do. And you're getting by, but you're not caught up in like trying to prove a point. I don't know if that's something it's been like that for a while for you, or just because this is such a big passion and the people that are around you and the support you had. I'm just curious how you seem to fall into that place, and if that's something that's been like that for a while for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been just a full-time athlete for, you know, going on, entering my second year. Full-time athlete and coach, right? Just online coach with a small roster of endurance
Yep.
athletes. Prior to that, I worked in the gym, and I'm doing the personal trainer grind where you're in there at 4 a.m. and you stay there until you basically shut the building down at 6 p.m. or whatever. You get your last client out of there. Do that all day. And then prior to that, I had a sales job, right? So I was doing outside sales, so driving around in my car with suit and tie and like making decent money like that, right? So like over the past like 6 years, I've just like slowly, if you're looking at, financial status, I'm just like slowly downgraded and,
Yeah.
but with replacing my time with things that I wanted to do, right? Like the sales job was a good potential career path if that's what I wanted to do. And I'm like, every day I'm in that car and I'm like, man, I, I want to I want to like test myself and test my fitness, right? And this is not conducive to that. So I got to get out of this. How can I play more of a role as an athlete? I'm going to start, and I'm already like studying because I want to get good at it myself. But okay, cool. I'll start coaching, right? And I'll just start doing personal training in the gym. So I got a job in a gym and I did the personal training gig for about 2 years, right? And then I'm still like, I could still be doing more to be a better athlete. And that's truly what I want right now, right? Like I can always go get a job. I can always start to try to make more money, but this has the like soonest expiring shelf life in my
Yeah.
eyes, right? Is like my ability to use my body. So I'm going to get every ounce out of myself right now. And I'm totally content with that. With putting certain other things to the side. I'm totally fine. I love how my days are spent. I feel good. I'm healthy, at times, right? Like running myself into the ends of the earth is probably not the healthiest thing to do at
No,
the end of the
but
day.
mentally, I feel like those are the situations that you truly, through physical discomfort, you learn about yourself most mentally. I think that's a true statement because you have to find yourself in those depths of just rugged suck or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, and I'm happy spending my days in the mountains and playing and being fit and like getting strong, dude, and just
Yeah, man.
enjoying myself. Yeah, like I can go out and I can go look for another sales job another day if I care, which I probably never will.
Yeah.
At,
I don't
at the
blame
end of
you.
the day, I will continue to build my coaching career. But until like that is going to be my major focus, I want to be the best athlete I possibly can be, and I will do everything I can to be successful in this.
I love
Yeah,
it, man.
very
I love
happily.
it. Yeah, and it shows, and it shows, and like you said, it definitely is transparent. There's no doubt about that. Um, One last thing I want to ask you is when it comes to someone that's getting into the endurance world, we'll go more into the OCR world. What advice would you give them transitioning maybe from someone who's never done a race, typical weightlifter, gym goer, that's a little nervous to getting started? What advice would you give them transitioning into it to get into the sport?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, you got to drop your ego a little bit if you haven't been a runner, um, and you can't rush anything. You can't rush this process, right? It's a game of years and decades, not weeks and months. Yeah, you just consistency wins. So start and find something that's sustainable for you to do, and work at that level until you're ready to push the level again, right? Like don't try to find fast tracks and hacks and this and that to try to circumnavigate the process, right? Because that's what it takes at the end of the day, is just working every day. So
I love it, man. No, I appreciate you talking, man. It was I've learned definitely a ton about you, and I'm excited to see you basically crush Saudi Arabia and show them
yeah,
what's
buddy.
up.
Yeah,
I'm
we're gonna be in
excited,
there.
man. So thanks for coming on, dude, and we'll definitely talk. And we're gonna continue to follow your journey over this next year. Do you plan on doing world's toughest motor next year?
Yeah, I think the plan right now is to go back to the Colorado Trail. I've got unfinished business.
Yeah,
I will be back at World's Toughest at some point, and
but
when I toe that start line, the goal is to run 125 miles. So
one
I
of
will.
one, one of one.
Yeah, nobody's ever done it, right? Like Mark Batchus ran 115, and with like a year with really solid conditions, and that's currently the record that's out there right now. But I think 125 miles is very much possible.
Oh, first time.
Um, yeah, so when I come back, that'll be the goal. But as of right now, my mind is stuck on the Colorado Trail. That's it.
Redemption run.
Yeah, it kicked my ass, and I would like to go back and get vengeance. And yeah, that's a record I want right now. So
Love it, man. And DJ Fox, just Instagram, everything that's the easiest way to get to you. If they want to do coaching, reach out to you.
yeah, reach out to me through Instagram. The handle is at DEE_JAY_FOX. You can hit me up there with questions, comments. If you just wanna reach out and say hi, like that's always welcoming too. So you'll see me coach it, or posting some of my coaching on there, my own training, just daily life stuff. So if you want to spectate, you can find me there.
Cool, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.